Good afternoon and welcome to the 17th Develop Croydon Investor Tour. This afternoon or lunchtime, we'll be taking you to Croydon virtually. Right about now, where this our standard tour, you would probably be pulling into East Croydon Station following a remarkably fast journey from either London Bridge or London Victoria or perhaps Gatwick Airport. And our tour would be starting from Box Park, where you would be congregating for bagels from the Great Oaktopia, one of Box Park's occupiers. Unfortunately, we can't offer the bagels this morning, but we are going to try and immerse you in Croydon as much as possible over the course of our first virtual tour. And to welcome you to the tour, I'd like to introduce Richard Plant, who's the chair of Develop Croydon.
Thanks very much, Bonnie. Welcome to Croydon. My name's Richard Plant. I'm a partner of SHW Chartered Surveyors, and in addition to running the Croydon office and the development division, I'm also the chairman of Develop Croydon. Normally, we would be sitting in the box bar at the back of Box Park, where, I don't know, it'd be more familiar to see Stormzy, etc. But today, obviously, it's all virtual. I'm a passionate supporter of Croydon. Having moved here over 25 years ago, I find it an excellent place to live, work and bring up children. The number of parks has been particularly useful recently, but the quality of schools and the ease of getting back from London 24 hours a day. And perhaps most of all, the diverse range of people you meet who are equally passionate and positive about the town. I've been delighted to watch the regeneration unfold. And it is still going even in this lockdown period with the construction of the development on top of Taverner House. So welcome to our 17th tour. Given the impressive developments appearing throughout Croydon and the number of deals that have been completed in the past and the huge investment pipeline that is transforming our town before our eyes, it's easy to forget where we were just over 10 years ago when Develop Croydon was formed. Develop Croydon is a private sector partnership that was founded in April 2011 by 8 founding members. They were Berkeley Homes, Barratt Homes, Guildhouse Rosebud, Mentor, SHW, Sinclair Clark and Stanhope Schroders. It was a response to a need to promote the regeneration of Croydon. And what a success it's been with the number of developments that have taken place. All the members are either based in Croydon or with projects in Croydon. And they saw the need to change perceptions to attract occupiers, to attract investment in the town. Collectively, we promote Croydon as a location in which to invest, work, live and locate. And it's the common goal of trying to secure the regeneration and the economic renewal of Croydon that's been our strength. On the slide in front of you are the current partners. And I say current because obviously over the 10 years, people have completed schemes and have disappeared. And in some cases, people have then bought in again in additional schemes and have come back in. But generally speaking, the members of the 70 mark. And you will see that it's the quality of the members that make the group so significant. You know, with Westfield, Hammerson, Canmore, Superdrug, London Borough of Croydon, even Boris was the 50th member back in time when he was Mayor of London. We've always been supported by the council and we make a very good team together. And I think the webinars that we've done recently in terms of how the planning process is working during this difficult period have shown how we can work together to help promote the regeneration of the borough. Croydon has always been a place of grand plans, even going back to the 60s, but now we have plans that are fit for purpose and more importantly are becoming reality at a surprising rate. The town centre master plan that is really effectively the R&F scheme, the West Croydon master plan, which we'll hear more about later, are all coming to fruition. We're seeing impressive new housing developments under construction. We've had penthouses selling for well in excess of £1 million. We've had 2 brand new Grade A office developments which are fully occupied, and we're going to hear about the next 2 today. Croydon Council and the GLA have played their part in enabling great public realm improvements, which, were we driving around in our coach or on our tram, you'd be able to see firsthand. But we've had a lot of public realm improvements. South End, Church Street have all seen significant improvements, as well as a new bus station at West Croydon, and improvements between the link between the buses, the trams, and the traditional heavy rail trains. And all of this was before the projected 5.25 billion public and private sector investment that was going to be headlined, or is headlined, by Westfield and Hammerson, the Croydon Partnership, redeveloping the retail core. Now, obviously, that is changing and being revised and reviewed as time moves on and the retail market changes, but they remain committed to redeveloping the Whitgift Centre and the town centre. Today is about challenging your preconceptions about Croydon and showing you that not only is it massively changing for the better, but the best is still to come. And indeed, there are still opportunities waiting for the right parties. And the development and regeneration is continuing even in these difficult times. You will see new schemes and developments in all sectors. And please do ask any specific questions you may have. Now I'm going to hand over to Bonnie, who's just going to outline the route of the tour that we're going to go on today.
Thanks. So on the tour today, we're going to be sticking as closely as possible to the routes that we would follow at our normal events. So on our investor tours, we traditionally take delegates on a private tram ride around the town centre, a coach tour of the commercial core and Purley Way, and then have a short walk around the town centre. So this afternoon, we're going to be doing just that. And here are a few maps of our routes for those of you with some knowledge of the area to help orientate yourselves. So first, we'll take the tram down George Street to Old Town, loop round behind Central to West Croydon, and then come back down Wellesley Road to East Croydon. Following a short walk around Ruskin Square with Schroders, we will then jump on the coach and head through the office hub, up the Purley Way and down the Purley Way, back into the town centre over the flyover. And we'll then walk through the Whitgift Centre down North End, and then come through the High Street and end at Bernard Weatherall House, the home of London Borough of Croydon. So before we start, a couple of little bits of housekeeping just with how this all works. Hopefully myself and Richard should have been appearing for you in a small box in front of the presentation. It's probably best if you move that box down to the bottom right of the screen so it doesn't interrupt the presentation too much during the tour and you don't look at us all the time. If you have any questions, please write them in the chat and we'll aim to answer them. And if not, we are going to be moving quite quickly through the tour. So much like in the real events, if you've got any questions or things you'd like to know more about afterwards, please let us know. And either we or any of the speakers that are joining us this afternoon will be able to help.
Right. So the main guides this morning, this afternoon will be Bonnie, myself, and Vanessa Clark, Principal of Sinclair Clark, who will specifically be sharing insight into the commercial office market in Croydon. We also will have some guest appearances, as on our real life investor tours, and we will be joined by several key stakeholders along the way to tell us about their specific schemes and in particular the exciting news that they have to speak about today. These will be Ronan Farrell from Tide Construction, the crane on which came down I think only last week or week before and is looking splendid against the blue sky. We'll have Stuart Cade from Mica Architects to talk about Fairfield Halls and the refurbishment that has just been completed there. We'll have Jess Burney from Schroders to talk about the exciting new office lettings that have been announced even in these difficult times. We'll have my colleague Alex Gale to talk to us about the industrial market, logistics market, and how that's faring. And we'll have Tim Howells from R&F to talk about Queen Square and also the refurbishment of the Nestlé building, which hopefully will continue shortly. But before we set off from Box Park, virtually, I'd like to introduce Shifa Mustafa, the Executive Director of Place from the London Borough of Croydon, who would also like to welcome you on this virtual visit to Croydon. Shifa.
Thanks, Richard, and welcome everybody. It's really encouraging to see that there's so much interest about Croydon. We remain very confident about Croydon's potential and its future, despite the very difficult situation we're going through with COVID-19. So I'll start off with a bit about myself and what I do for the council. So I head a place department to effectively have 6 principal functions. They include all of the regeneration and growth, planning and transport, environment, the whole property function, and culture and community safety. Been at Croydon now for around 4 years. So welcome everybody. As I said, really pleased to see and encouraged by the numbers of people joining this tour. I was thinking last night actually about if I was doing this introduction 6 months ago, what would I be saying? Obviously a lot has happened in 6 months. And this is what I'd be saying. I'd be reminding everybody some of the points that Richard already picked up in his introduction to Croydon the place, about the brilliant transport links the borough has. You know, 15 minutes into London, but also 15 minutes into the coast and into Gatwick. We'll come back to the impact on aviation a bit later. But this is our critical infrastructure, you know, really well positioned in terms of London and beyond. I'd be telling you about our significant regeneration ambitions that, as Richard outlined earlier, you know, have been part of planning over a number of years and a reaction to Croydon's reputation and some of the challenges it had, you know, 10 years ago, when it wasn't the place that investors would look at necessarily for their major investments. Huge regeneration program, and that's been supported by a huge program of infrastructure. You know, again, Richard mentioned earlier, the 5 million for our 500 million rather for the investments into our infrastructure and our public realm. That was funded through the government and the retention of business rates. I'd be telling you that their ambitions included all sections of the development industry, you know, retail, offices, culture. We're now beginning to see all of that coming to fruition. You know, as you walk around, you see the cranes, you see the ambition, you see things actually happening. I'd be telling you about recently, you know, we thought about what's the next 5-10 years, you know, how do we build on Fairfield, ambitions around a university, again, very shortly to come to fruition. I'll be talking to you about the place and its people, diverse range of people, passionate about the borough, the sorts of neighbourhoods we have, our schools, our open spaces. Because I know, having worked in this sort of role for many, many years, that's what investors look for when they want to think about investment. Is really, what is the infrastructure? What's the ambition of the place? What's the opportunity? What are the people like? What sort of place is it? And we've got all that at Croydon. And that's what I'd have been telling you 6 months ago. And I'd have also told you about how we go about doing business in Croydon. So what do you expect as an investor, as a developer, when you come and you talk to senior people and politicians in the council, you know, with our partners? What would you get? And what you'd get is a borough that's absolutely pro-development, absolutely prepared to push boundaries around design and density. You know, you can see that in terms of the awards and what you can see walking around. Number of awards we're winning for high density developments that are different, that are pushing boundaries, looking at how we can do things differently. So that's what I'd been saying 6 months ago, and I thought about, well, has any of that changed today? And the answer is no, none of that's changed about Croydon. But of course, what has changed is that we've got now, I think, 2 additional factors, if I can call them that come to play. And one is internally, and it's about, I think it's politically driven around how, in addition to all those ambitions about regeneration and growth, there is a huge ambition now within Croydon around environmental sustainability. And that will feature more and more going forward and will start to influence the way we do things. Absolutely driven from our politicians. And it's all about the confidence the borough has now to really think about the future and being future-proof and making sure that we are creating, you know, a smart city in terms of technology, environment, and all the other things coming together. Very clear vision for that. And that is within our control, and we've decided to do that by choice. And of course, the other factor is that post-COVID-19, what has that meant? Now, clearly, everybody knows that we will hopefully very shortly be coming out of what has been a health crisis into what will be an economic crisis, no doubt, and a lot of work to do to build the confidence of London's economy, the country's economy, and of course global economies. But we in Croydon really started to talk to a number of you about what it's meant to you, what it's meant to your plans, what are the implications of COVID-19, what are some of the opportunities, what are some of the challenges, what do we now need to do to make sure that the opportunity and the potential and the ambition we had remains on track. And it's not all bad news. I can say to you, from having spent some time in the last few weeks talking to our key investors, that actually some things will carry on as planned. Not everything will come to a standstill or be reviewed. We know, for example, I know that you're going to hear more about this from Jessica later on, about phase 2 of Ruskin Square and the Home Office. Now we know that's going to happen. That's on track. It's still working to the timetable that was previously agreed. We also know that the London South Bank University presence in Croydon is on track and still there. And these are two really huge investments that will just show that despite COVID-19, what we've been through, things will continue to happen in Croydon. Obviously, there'll be others that will slow down, you know, and again, some developers, principally, again, not all of them, some residential schemes will complete. We know that 101 George Street is due to complete in August and be handed over. There's others that will take a bit longer. Maybe they need to regroup. But overall, you know, things will continue to happen in Croydon. You know, we will continue to be lobbying for our share of additional investment and support to get us through COVID and to make sure that we achieve what is absolutely the potential of Croydon. So in conclusion, then, what I would say is that Croydon is a borough of opportunity. It's a borough that over the years has shown that it can do business and make things happen. You know, we have all the benefits of our place, our neighbourhoods, our green spaces, and we've got a team, not just the council, but Develop Croydon and other partners that are all passionate about getting things done and working together in the interests of our borough. So thank you for joining today. I hope you enjoy your tour, and I look forward to meeting you all either in these sorts of webinars or wherever possible in the future. Thank you very much. Enjoy your tour.
Thank you very much, Shifa. I think very well summarised, and thanks for joining us. Now, I think the next point was just a special thank you, really, to Glenn Foster, who has been our photographer for Develop Croydon for quite a while, and a lot of the photographs that are on these slides were taken by Glenn. And I would thoroughly recommend finding him on Instagram as Glenn Foster Photography or Croydon _photographer. He has taken some absolutely amazing images of the blood red moon with the clock tower in the foreground and the lavender fields over near Woodmanston. So he's absolutely brilliant. Now, as we
just jumping in quickly, Richard, I just wanted to also give a quick thank you to a couple of colleagues at White Label. So when you're seeing this tour, you'll see that in quite a lot of places we're actually going to be virtually walking around the areas, and joining our teams put a lot of work into putting that all together. So thanks, John, and also thank you to Julie, who's going to be helping to steer the trams and the coaches and make sure that we all stay on track for the rest of the tour. Back to Richard.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Bon. So as we virtually come out of Box Park, just a few words about East Croydon and the surrounding area. As an occupier investor, it's genuinely difficult to find a better, more well-connected hub. It's as quick from Croydon to Victoria as it is from Soho or Paddington or Covent Garden. Croydon has outstanding transport connections, and in this post-corona world, that is still going to be very, very important. We have the ability to reach a workforce very quickly from as far afield as sort of Burgess Hill. We've got quick connections to Gatwick as and when that reopens. We're 15 minutes to central London. We can go to Victoria, London Bridge. At peak times, you get 24 trains per hour from East Croydon. So you never really need to look at the timetable. You just stand there and one will arrive. There's 14 services now to Gatwick, which is 14 minutes away, which is not too bad. And we have the overground service from West Croydon, as well as obviously direct road links through, well, to the rest of South London, but also the M25. And a lot of our office blocks still have reasonable levels of parking. The likes of Sunley and so on have good car parks. And that could well be more important in the future. But we've also got excellent public transport links in the form of the buses, but also the trams, being the only place really in South London with a tram service. And with increasing focus on cycling and improved pedestrian links, Croydon has already, with its public realm improvements, looked after that. And even though East Croydon Station is so good, Network Rail have received overwhelming support for what they call the Brighton Main Line improvements, but it's specifically to create new kind of railway flyovers just to the north of East Croydon to relieve a bottleneck, which will improve the speed of services both through to London and south to Brighton. The new station, which will be part of that, will incorporate platforms in some land reserved along the edge of Ruskin Square, and a new gateway experience at East Croydon. £4.4 million worth of improvements are underway to improve the interchange already, transforming the space outside and providing better connections between George Street and Wellesley Road, including the new bicycle area, bicycle cycle hub, and taxi ranks, additional taxi ranks by the new bridge. And obviously, we would just have come out of Box Park, which is the world famous pop-up mall, sort of food, entertainment marketplace, which opened next to the station in October 2016 on the site of what would be the 5th office building on the Ruskin Square site. It mirrors, and I would say improves upon, the first pop-up mall in Shoreditch. And it's basically constructed out of 80 shipping containers and has approximately 35 food and drink outlets. The official launch coincided with a large-scale music festival and was a huge success with residents, office workers, tourists and visitors from all over London. A lot of people travelling further south break their journey to get off at East Croydon just to go to Box Park. The third scheme is recently completed at Wembley, and we'll probably hear more about that from Schroders shortly. So before we board the tram, we're going to hear from Tide Construction of Croydon about the development that would be immediately opposite us as we came out of Box. It's called 101 George Street, and it's the world's tallest modular towers. Ronan?
Perfect. Thanks very much, Richard. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ronan Farrell. I'm head of design with Tide Construction, and we are the developer and contractor at 101 George Street. As a developer and contractor, we specialize in student accommodation, residential, C3 residential housing, and hotels. As Richard alluded to, we are a modular company. So we manage and manufacture volumetric modules off-site, which are then transported to site and installed. 101 George Street is a flagship scheme of ours, working with Vision Modular Construction and then with Greystar and Henderson Park. We are delivering this 44 and 38 story tower with 546 build to rent houses. As Richard said, this is the world's largest modular tower at 44 stories. We won't touch on it today, but we recently received resolution to grant for a taller tower in the near vicinity. So we look forward to taking that forward with Croydon Council in the future. 101 George Street is quite a good case study for a number of reasons, and it can illustrate the significant benefit to housing delivery when certain things are put in place. Being a modular developer and manufacturer is key to that in terms of the speed that we can deliver kind of high quality housing. Having innovative funders and operators, which we're lucky enough to have at 101 George Street in Greystar and Henderson Park, but also having a proactive council, a council that is willing to work with a developer to deliver an element of their housing target, and also works with us to design a building that serves the area well. And I think from what people can see at 101 George Street now, we've really managed to do that. In terms of the timescales and working, an example of that working well with Croydon Council, we first met Croydon in April 2017 to discuss the scheme. So a little over 3 years later, you can see the work that's been done to date. So that includes a 9-month planning process and then a little over 28 months on site. In terms of modules and module delivery, the modules themselves are manufactured in a facility we have in Bedford. The modules are fully fitted out, they're weather tight, and then they're transported to site on the back of trucks, and then they're craned into position. The modules in 101 George Street were installed in a little over 35 weeks. So those of you in the area would have seen 2 concrete cores in probably May 2019, and then in 35 weeks later, there was almost a finished building there with 1,526 modules in total. There's a number of benefits to modular construction. It allows us to work with challenging and constrained sites. So obviously we have George Street, we have Network Rail, and then we have College Road to the south. Reducing the number of trades on site makes those logistics all that much easier. We have 80% less vehicle movements on site because of that, and because the modules are built in a controlled environment in a factory, we also have roughly 60% less site personnel. So that in and of itself has a number of advantages. We offer a cleaner, safer, temperature-controlled environment for our workers. High-risk activities are completed within the factory. So if you're installing a window on the 40th floor of a traditional build, you're 40 floors up. If you're building in modular construction, you're doing it about a foot from the ground. So there's a number of benefits to modular construction, with health and safety being one of them. Once the modules arrive on site, they arrive fully fitted, and they just require a final coat of paint, and the floor finishes to be installed. And just to give you an example, 7 weeks after the first module was installed, we had our show flat ready for the client to snag, and then we used that for investor tours, and the client used it for leasing. Conscious of time, we are currently preparing to hand over the scheme. As I mentioned earlier, a little over 3 years after first meeting Croydon Council. We're planning a full handover in August of this year. So we're currently working with the council just to agree the final elements of the public realm work, including public art, and how those public realm works can tie into the larger Fairfield master plan as part of the College Road development, brick by brick, and the Fairfields Hall scheme. So constant dialogue with the council, and very excited to be coming to the end of this scheme, but looking forward to what's coming next with our College Road development. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Ronan. I've been in a couple of the flats there, and there's absolutely no way you can tell anything in terms of the fact that they were built in a modular way. And I imagine that the controlled environment you spoke about has benefits in the post-corona era as well. So now I'm pleased to welcome our next guest speaker, which is Stuart Cade from Mica Architects, who's going to tell us a little bit about the refurbishment of Fairfield, I believe. Stuart, over to you.
Hi, thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. Yes, I'm going to touch on three aspects of the Fairfield. Firstly, the halls, and then the public realm, and the new Fairfield Homes development, all to the south of the Fairfield quarter. So the projects that Ronan was talking about are to the northeast of the Fairfield site. It's a 6-hectare site in total. And the Fairfield Halls is in the southwest corner, and the public realm adjoining that to the north, and the Fairfield Homes to the east adjoining the railway. Our role in Croydon, my role as is Director of Mica Architects, our role in Croydon spans back 4 years, and these projects look forward 4 years. So our first commission was to develop a hybrid planning application for the whole site, building on the master plan. At its centre, it had the Fairfield Halls refurbishment, which opened last autumn. That refurbishment touched every part of this enormous building, enormous celebrated Festival of Britain concert hall. Its concert hall has the greatest acoustic in the country, much celebrated and recognised by all. That was entirely refurbished. It was a heritage-led approach in the main, with all the foyers being refurbished, and the kind of existing historic 1960s generosity of the building was sort of returned. The openness and transparency onto the Wellesley Road was reinstated, and the building was largely opened up. We added new facilities. The entire south wing was rebuilt for 2 new large studios for diverse multi-purpose use. And equally to the north, we added a new glazed box cloister, which will address the new public realm. The building opened in the autumn, and BH Live put on an amazing array of events and programs. The increased occupancy that the building had was used to its full use. And I'm pleased to say the building has been shortlisted for a number of awards in the last few days, including one, a very high profile one in the last few days. So we're very looking forward to it reopening and that next stage of re-celebrating the opening of the halls. So the next aspect I just wanted to touch on was the public realm, which is the space to the north. This separate commission is a world-class landscape that we are leading with an international team of architects and artists. It's a very large public realm project. The core scheme is 11,000 square meters of new public realm space, soft landscaping, water features and hard standing. Plus there's a further 7,000 square meters of landscape across the site, which we'll be discussing and developing with others, including in the northeast corner. The scheme is as much as sort of creating a centerpiece to this light-filled historic Fairfield public realm space, but also creating routes. There's a strong desire line from East Croydon Station down to the halls and beyond, which is much wanted but has never really been provided, and this scheme will and other schemes will provide that really key route. The public realm will include this central, the image you're seeing is a central a water field, which has 3 functions. It has it's for splashing and fountains. It's a mirror with the fountains off, which is a perfect mirror reflection of the existing and emerging skyline of Croydon. And it can also be drained and be used for markets, events, concerts, etc. It's also, the public realm will also provide a new generous forecourt for the halls, and a frontage all the way from Croydon College down to the crossing of Berkeley Road and Park Lane over to Queen's Gardens. And finally, in what is a really innovative solution, the the hall's refurbishment is being part funded by this, cross-funded by this large residential development called Fairfield Homes. It will deliver 421 new homes, again, at the eastern edge of the public realm and just to the south of the Tide developments. It's over 5 blocks. There's 2 taller tower elements and a series of these mansion blocks. It has a particularly unique relationship to landscape. The scheme fronts onto the public realm I mentioned, but also has an entirely new private garden and square at its centre. This image, it has a private courtyard, a play street, and I think the properties or the homes will be really characterised by their access to their own private access, but also this generous access to the public realm and the outdoors. And I think there's another just final point. There's this lovely relationship with the home, the halls, obviously a financial one, but also the halls. We repurposed its enormous Titanic-like plant room into a new energy centre. So the halls will be a net energy provider for the whole Fairfield quarter and will provide a substantial part of the energy for these homes, which I think will be a wonderful added story to this development on the Fairfield. Thank you.
Super. Thanks very much, Stuart. And normally we would be calling into Fairfield later in the tour, and often we stop there for lunch at the end. But obviously that can't happen today. But it does. Its position on this tour does highlight that important route straight through to the station that will be provided. Particularly important for me because it goes straight from our office and it will cut a minute off the walk to East Croydon Station, I should think. So now we're going to board the tram. Now, normally, this is one of my favourite bits, the ability to basically have our own private tram to ride around on. But anyway, we'll do it virtually now. We are allowed to do this basically because London Trams are one of our Develop Croydon partners, as you may have noticed from the logos earlier. Just a little bit of background. The tram opened in 2000. So 20 years old, which is amazing, really. It doesn't seem that long. It's the only tram network in the southern England, nearest is Birmingham. And that's sort of a testament to how forward-looking Croydon has always been. It was taken over by TfL from Tramlink in 2008. The trams run around the town centre and then off to Wimbledon and Beckenham and New Addington. They carry around 30 million passengers each year, and their reliability is about 99%. So they're very, very good in snow and all weathers. The recent refurbishment has meant that we now have a fleet of new trams. I think we have 12 new ones added in 2012, which brings the total up to 35. And there's a new platform at Wimbledon. So now there's 12 trams an hour between Croydon and Wimbledon, which is basically a 7 or 8 minute frequency everywhere else. Now I think so this is, we're just doing the town centre loop to just give you a flavour, and we'll be heading down George Street towards the old town and old palace, and then back up towards West Croydon, and then returning via Wellesley Road to East Croydon Station. So I'd now like to hand over to Vanessa Clark to tell us a little bit about the important new office developments, which will be on the left of George Street as we go down.
Thanks, Richard. Hello, everybody. I'm Vanessa Clark, Sinclair Clark. I'm delighted to be working for Freshwater. Freshwater have a portfolio in Croydon of 5 projects. The CGI you can see shows a project that is currently at a pre-application stage. It will be for a gross area of 194,000 square feet, and it will net down to about 154,000 square feet over 12 floors, including a mezzanine. This will take up 2 of the buildings on that site, 96 George Street and St Matthew's House. And I think, you know, along with Freshwater, we believe passionately that there is a real need for new grade A developed offices in Croydon. You'll be hearing shortly about some pre-let activity, which is happening at the moment, particularly on Ruskin Square. We think that Croydon has a great future, and I've been working on the town for 20 years in liaison with colleagues in the area. And you know, we're so excited about this new form of development. There will also be a phase 2. An adjoining block is Suffolk House. You can't see it at the moment, but I'm pretty sure that we will. Oh, there we go. The tram's just in front of it. But Suffolk House is the rather strange-looking building with Sainsbury's at the bottom. That will be a bigger phase 2 in around 5 to 6 years. And looking back along George Street, you can see Allianz, AIG. Allianz is a potential opportunity. That's 102 George Street, which has a consent for residential. And this is very much prime East Croydon. I'll be talking about the areas of Croydon, the values, the growth in Croydon, where the opportunities are as we go around on the tour. And typically Richard and I by now would be throwing a microphone between us. So if you can virtually imagine, that's what we're trying to do. I'm handing back to Richard now for Brick by Brick.
So this is just the Brick by Brick office on George Street. Brick by Brick is the developer of the Fairfield Homes flats, and indeed many other residential schemes, and is a sort of subsidiary company of the London Borough of Croydon. And indeed, it was Brick by Brick's scheme, which was the first consented scheme in the new virtual planning committee. And those proposals behind Fairfield, you've got 421 homes together with all the public open space and the public realm that Stuart Cade described. So by now, we would be crossing the High Street, the sort of historic centre of the town, and I'd be handing over to Bonnie to do a bit around the Old Town.
Yeah, so coming down into Old Town, we'd ironically be going past Faze, which is a new 500 capacity club and art space that opened in December 2019. And we'd also go past Hewitt's, which is one of the oldest businesses in Croydon. They've been trading for over 150 years. And we'd come down to the parish church of Croydon, or Croydon Minster, which dates back to 960 AD and is next door to Old Palace School, which was previously used as a summer residence for many of the archbishops of Canterbury, who hosted kings and queens there, including Henry VIII, Queen Mary and Elizabeth I. And there's been a renewed focus in Croydon on restoring Old Town to its former status, a lot of emphasis on niche and independent retail and building new homes that are integrated into the historic environment down there. So from Old Town, and we'll hear a bit more about Croydon's heritage later, we'd be coming back up towards West Croydon Station behind Central and to one of Richard's favourite schemes.
Yes. So St Michael's Square, this is sort of immediately opposite West Croydon Station. And it's almost a developed Croydon story, really. Darren Nathan was with a different developer back in time when we started, and produced about 3 schemes around Croydon. And I bumped into him a couple of years ago at MIPIM, 2 weeks after he'd joined London Square, and said it was about time he came back. And during this lockdown period, this Corona period, it was finally announced that Clarion had agreed to support the scheme. So London Square will be developing the 2 towers, 25 and 21 stories, 232 units. Clarion will be doing 1 tower for affordable housing, and London Square will be doing the other for private sale. The towers are designed like that as part of the original West Croydon master plan by East architects, in order to open up the view of the Grade 1 listed church behind, which at the moment is completely obscured by a parade of somewhat run-down shops. However, the part of the frontage of those shops was a very, very early cinema, and you can just see that at the very bottom of the slide. That part is actually retained. And then a new public realm area is opened up in between to help show off the church. Behind that, that's better. Behind that, we've got the bus station at West Croydon, which we've mentioned earlier, which was an award-winning new design. And behind that, you can see Delta Point, which once upon a time was BT's headquarters. It featured as Gotham Hospital in one of the Batman films, but is now 404 one and two bedroom apartments that was converted by Criterion, who have a number of other schemes in the town. It's all complete, residents have moved in, and it's operated by My Flat. Sorry, in the end, actually, they managed to get 584 flats there. So My Flat is now fully operational. They also did Bedford House and Canterbury House as well. Now I'm going to hand you back to Vanessa to talk about Interchange.
Thanks, Richard. Interchange is one of our interesting buildings. It had various stages in its life, being originally occupied by British Telecom, who actually occupied it vertically. It was in 3 almost separate towers, and you can see the glazed entrance area now on the building. That wasn't a part of the original. CBRI investors were the original owners, and they were forced to sell at about 8.5 million at one point to Canmore and Carville, who then spent around 25 to 27 million pounds refurbishing Interchange. It's 184,000 square feet in total, and they opened up the floors, not completely, they didn't take the cores out, but they opened up the floors to meet occupier demand for bigger floor plates, and they established a new glazed semicircle entrance area, which is a huge public zone with a cafe and various amenities off it. It was sold by Canmore and Carmel to Tristan, and they paid £71 million for the investment, and they now have the building completely let. It's got some very key occupiers in it, from Clarion Housing, Siemens, EDF. Rental levels in the building now are around £32 a foot, and most astonishingly, because I've walked to the basement levels, it has 9 subterranean levels of car parking, 450 car spaces in total, the largest supply, I believe, in Croydon. So it's a pretty impressive building. Richard, I'm going to hand over to you for Saffron.
Okay. Saffron Square was really the development that kind of put tall residential towers on the map in Croydon and set the benchmark. It was developed through the last recession into 2007, 2008. It's an iconic 43-storey tower. It's 791 residential units, ranging from 1-bedroom apartments to some absolutely fantastic luxury penthouses at the very top. When it was selling, it almost charted the movement of the market, in that some of the lower levels actually sold at about £350 a square foot. And then the market climbed massively as we came out of recession. And there's figures reported of sort of 675 a square foot and possibly even more as the sales went up the tower. Immediately adjacent, just to the right, you can begin to see Apollo and Luna House, which I'll hand you back to Vanessa for.
Thanks, Richard. Apollo and Luna House will be well known to a lot of people, I believe. It's the home of the UK Border Agency. There are 2 blocks with iconic pods which form the entrances. In total, it's 450,000 square feet, and the UK Border Agency are paying £12.50 per square foot. It's owned by Hobie, who famously bought it for just over £100 million just a few years ago. And at the moment, the UK Border Agency are on a sliding lease. I believe they've got about 4 years left. Rent review's just taken place, but there hasn't been an uplift in the rent. It's a really complicated rent review for this block, and I suspect this could be an opportunity. Going back quite a few years, The blocks were bought by Achilles Kalakis, who achieved notoriety and it is actually, I believe, still serving at His Majesty's pleasure. But the plans Achilles had for those blocks was to redevelop them and replace it with a 3 million square foot campus. Now, who knows what's going to happen within a period of 4 years, but definitely one to have earmarked for an opportunity at some point. Richard, I'm going to hand over to you. One Lansdowne.
Yeah, one Lansdowne Road is a key site because partly because of the new bridge over the station links into Lansdowne Road, and it would be the walk that you would do into the new shopping centre, and obviously on the corner of Wellesley Road as well. It has planning consent, or sorry, the site was pieced together by Guildhouse Rosebride, and Piers, the world-renowned architect Piers Goff of CZWG Architects, secured a planning consent for 2 towers, a 68-storey one and a 41-storey one, linked by an 11-storey podium. The design would rival the Shard in terms of height, and it would contain 794 residential units and 35,000 square metres of office space, as well as retail, swimming pool, gym, and a public viewing gallery at the top, which would be absolutely fantastic when combined with the highest bar and restaurant facilities in London. So I think we're now going to move down Wellesley Road. You can see some of the public realm improvement in the middle, which was the greening of Wellesley Road. We've just gone past Green Park House, so everything to the right is Croydon Partnership. Number 1 Lansdowne has just gone past to the left, Jury's Inn. Then we've got the Quarters, which has been developed, and just there, behind the tram, the blue hoarding, was Cambridge House, which we sold to Notting Hill Housing Association, and is now construction to provide 90 flats and going up 27 stories. What we would be able to see to the left if we weren't under the underpass is Norfolk House, which is owned by Kennedy Wilson, and itself has various development opportunities. And that brings us back to East Croydon.
So at this point, we're going to be jumping off the tram and walking down to Ruskin Square, where we're going to hear from Jess Burney from Schroders, who's going to tell us a bit about the full Ruskin Square development and the recent updates on Building 2. So, hi Jess.
Ruskin Square, everyone. So Ruskin Square is owned by the Schroder UK Real Estate Fund, for which I'm fund manager of. Stanhope are our retained development managers. So Ruskin Square itself extends to a 9-acre site right next to East Croydon Station. It's broadly split into 5 office buildings, 4 residential buildings, and a multi-storey car park. So all in all, it totals about 1.25 million square foot of office space, 625 residential units, and it's got about 100,000 square foot of either retail or leisure units, which would sit below the office buildings, and obviously there's public realm throughout. Box Park, which Richard discussed at the beginning of the tour, that actually sits on our last office building site, and it was really built to provide amenity to Croydon as Ruskin Square is being developed out with retail and leisure, and obviously restaurant space at ground floor under each building. So you can see in this slide that we built 1 Ruskin, which is the first building that you can now see, and it's entirely let to the HMRC, bar the ground floor, which has retail units, which we've now white boxed and are ready for use as meanwhile use. And one of the units is going to open, hopefully when we're all back to normal, as a yoga studio. So we are now standing on Caithness Walk, which divides the sort of office side of the scheme in front of us, with the residential sites which are behind us. And as you can see, Caithness Walk provides direct access to East Croydon Station. If we can skip to the next slide. what you can see now in front of us on the left hand side of the building is the first residential building that was completed in 2016 as a JV with Places for People. There's 161 units that were built to sell and now fully sold. The two plots of land that you can see, the one in front of you is the next two residential sites. They've got planning permission for, in two towers, either to build to sell or a build to rent model. And then the second site that you can see in the sort of middle right hand side there is the next two office plots. And we've actually combined these office plots to build one single building of 330,000 square foot, which is going to be known as 2 Ruskin Square. This is a CGI of 2 Ruskin Square, so we're actually now standing on the corner of Caithness Walk and Dingle Road. And as you will have seen from the Develop Croydon article, this building is now pre-let in its entirety, obviously bar the ground floor restaurant units, to the government on a 25-year lease. It was one of the more interesting deals I've ever had to do from the farm office in Norfolk, which is where I currently am. If you just click onto the next CGI, this is an entrance this is CGI of 2 Ruskin Square from the main central Ruskin Square public realm. So you've got on the left you can see the entrance to 2 Ruskin Square. It's straight in front is the HMRC building, and on the right is Box Park. In terms of timescales for this building coming forward, so we're in planning at the moment and we hope to receive planning probably end of June, beginning of July. Our aim is to start piling at the beginning of November, and our target completion date is the end of 2023, which sounds like a long time, but given the size of the building and also the sustainability credentials that we're trying to put into the building, it's actually quite a tight time scale. And I did actually just want to take a minute on the sustainability credentials. We've adopted something called the Design for Performance Initiative. And what that does is it aims to import the Australian energy system NABERS, spelled NABERS, not the sitcom we all know and love. But the general principle is to optimize performance and use, and in addition, the design is required to include things like all electric energy statement. It's got rainwater harvesting, it's got high performance facade, 35% green roof cover, just under 400 cycle spaces and just under 40 showers. It's similar to Thai construction. We are trying to do as much as possible in a modular structural design, and that really minimises the embodied carbon. There's photovoltaics in the scheme. We've increased the fresh air volumes, and we're targeting a BREEAM excellent rating as well as a well-enabled building. And I think the final point is that the procurement process actually focus on what we call modern methods of construction, and that really minimises construction waste and obliges SRF to a local employment and training strategy. So again, linking in the local community. And I think what's important is lots of people talk about sustainability and impact investing at the moment, and I do think the efforts that we've put into this building really attracted our pre-let to want to take one of our buildings. So that's it from me, and I'll hand you back to Richard. Thank you for attending the tour.
Thanks very much, Jess. Actually, I think this next slide is going to be Vanessa, which is the view from the there we go, view from just next to the HMRC building, looking towards number 1 Croydon.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Richard. Thanks, Jess. East Croydon, it really is the area of destination for the majority of occupiers looking at Croydon. And Croydon actually has divided areas: West Croydon, the Civic Quarter, but East Croydon is the zone that occupiers definitely look to. And it has a lot of key buildings within it already. This slightly crinkly building in the background there you can see is 1 Croydon, number 1 Croydon. It's owned by Hermes. It was designed by Richard Seifert and Partners and completed in 1970. It has 24 stories. It's 269 feet high. And if you're there around dusk and in the evening, it lights up in all sorts of different colours. I've often stood there just watching it. It's fascinating. There's space available in the building. Space gets refurbished as it becomes available. Typical occupiers in the building include Atkins, Collins Construction, the Gym Group, and Sussex Innovation Centre. And I'll be mentioning the clusters in Croydon, particularly the emerging sector of HEIs, of which Sussex is one. To the just on the rail track there, you can see the Royal Mail signage on the building. That is the old Royal Mail site. That is now owned by Network Rail. It has consent for residential. Network Rail will be looking at this to deliver it along with the improvements on the Bryson line and to East Croydon Station. And that will be one of many sites around the rail tracks they will be bringing forward. So it's another interesting one. Alongside that building, immediately behind, you can just see the top of a block extending. That is Knollys and Stevenson House, owned by UBS. It's two adjoining buildings of around 200,000 square feet. And again, it's multi-let into wings. Mitsubishi typically are in there. Floor plates are around 10,000 square feet. And rental levels in that building are low 20s. I should have mentioned in number one, rents there around £30 per square foot. An important part of this particular area, and particularly because of the need for permeability between East and West Croydon, is the bridge. The bridge, it gives a second entrance. It enables pedestrian flow between East Croydon Station easily and more quickly into West Croydon Station. In due course, when the new developments start on Cherry Orchard Road, which Richard will be touching on, by the Mentor Group, the bridge will then be opened up onto Cherry Orchard Road, giving complete permeability throughout, which is good news. Immediately alongside Knollys and Stevenson House is another part of the freshwater portfolio, Simpson House. This is again a multi-let building with some residential behind it, all fully let and held by Freshwater. I'm now going to hand over to Richard to talk about the Mentor development.
Thanks very much. The Mentor scheme effectively comprises 3 sites. The first phase has already delivered 330 new homes, and is those towers starting small and gradually rising from the right of the screen moving left. The 2 big towers right in the middle, that's Morello 2, which will deliver 445 new homes, which will include 107 new affordable ones. And kind of in between the 2, slightly to the right of those 2 towers, is Cherry Orchard Gardens, where Mentor are on site, developing a mixed tenure development of 71 residential units, community centre and some shops on Cherry Orchard Road. Moving on, another shot of Morello, but moving on to Pocket. This is Pocket Living's Croydon scheme. You can see the proximity of it to number 1 Croydon, which tells you how close to East Croydon Station it is. It's 100% affordable. It's 21 stories high. It's 112 of their discounted 1-bedroom pocket homes, exclusively for first-time buyers. But there's also other 2- and 3-bedroom flats, which are going to be owned and managed by Optivo. Kind of immediately behind it is an L&Q scheme, again seeing number 1 Croydon lit up as Vanessa described on the right, places this scheme. This is 137 new homes. This is on site as well. It's 53% affordable, 8 to 18 stories high. So we're now, in reality, boarding our coach, where Vanessa will just give an introduction to some of the office market statistics.
Thanks, Richard. So just to really touch on the broad brush of the office dynamics in Croydon, some of you will be familiar that Croydon's office market ostensibly grew in the 60s and 70s. The office market was once the largest office market outside of the central London core, and at that level, around 2012, it stood at 7.9 million square feet. The glut of 60s and 70s buildings proved very attractive and very appropriate for the government's PDR initiative, during which 27 buildings changed hands, largely for residential conversion. The stock now stands at 5.8 million square feet, and to put it into context, that's on a similar scale to Hammersmith, Chiswick and Brentford combined, and also just about Maidenhead. So the office market is predominantly, the interest level circulates around East Croydon, West Croydon, and the fringe of the Civic Quarter. There is a huge base of occupiers in Croydon. It's a really impressive amount of occupiers and really household names. There are certain clusters which really do well in Croydon. Obviously, government is again growing and is the largest sector, but also we have engineering, we have growth markets in energy. I've mentioned before HEIs and university accommodation, and Shifa Mustafa earlier mentioned London South Bank University, who are going to be a prominent part of the Croydon market. I think the education side will grow hugely with more universities coming into the market, which is definitely a desire of the council. Energy is another growth level. The energy sector with Green Network Energy, who moved from St Paul's. Perceptions of the Croydon have improved markedly with delivery of new homes, the bridge, the amenity value, the investment in infrastructure and public realm, and also, you know, a really important point, particularly when looking at the development side, viability for a long time had a break. It just wasn't viable to deliver in Croydon, but now rental levels stand at £35 per square foot, achieved by Ruskin Square and almost achieved by Renaissance, which we'll talk about shortly as an incredible model for rental growth and capital growth. Yields at the moment in the market are proven at 4.8%, 5%. There have been a steady turnaround of investments. Office availability stands at around 281,000 square feet. That is about 4.8% of stock. But in actual fact, that figure will shrink. Around 50,000 square feet of that is already earmarked, which will bring the availability level down to 4%. Behind take-up in the market, it's always interesting to note the lease renewal activity. Last year, take-up was actually quite low. I think that was there was a level of uncertainty in the market. It was pre-COVID, but the market was struggling a bit last year. But behind the figures, lease renewals were over 100,000 square feet. So even when you see some faltering take-up figures, which there have been around economic issues in the 2008 to 9 era, there's inevitably an incredible loyal base of occupiers. And obviously, even this year, the Home Office agreeing 330,000 square foot of offices. There's another 20,000 square foot already done, and another 50,000 square foot under offer. So bizarrely, 2020 could end up being a remarkable year for Croydon.
Right.
Root.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Carry on,
Bonnie?
So this is just an outline of the vague area of the commercial core in Croydon, just to give you an idea, and we're going to be driving straight down the middle of it. So we're going to be starting again back at East Croydon, where we just boarded the coach, outside AMP House, which is opposite Box Park and also owned by Schroders. So I'll pass that to Vanessa for that bit.
Okay, Bonnie, thank you very much. So the picture you've got in front of you at the moment shows AMP House over to the far left of the picture. That's a Stanhope Schroders owned multi-let building. It has occupiers such as Quintessence, LAH manage a section of the building. and it has a whole range of occupiers and then retail on the ground floor. Alongside it on the right is Renaissance, which was bought by Abstract Securities in 2013. At that point in time, the market was oversupplied. It was struggling to make any form of development work. In fact, there hadn't been any development for about 2 decades. Abstract bought the site at the end of 2012. They were introduced to Croydon Council, John Rouse and Mike Kiley at the time. And by March of 2013, they had planning consent and were on site. And then the timeline for this became really impressive. Within a very short period of time, Abstract managed to attract the Pension Protection Fund, and then shortly afterwards sold the investment of the building, half let, half not let, to M&G. M&G paid £36 million at the time. Pension Protection Forum at that point were paying £22.50 per square foot. The engineers for the project, Mott MacDonald, then took a floor and paid £23.50 a foot. And during this period, M&G moved Purley Way over from another site they held on Bedford Park, and the building became fully let. Shortly into a new market condition, Purley Way actually went into administration. The floors were taken back. They had 2 floors in the building, and very quickly, local occupier Solium took half of the ground floor at £32 a foot, and Green Network Energy moved from St Paul's, taking 30,000 square foot and paying a blend of £32 to £34 a foot. So within a 5-year period, the building achieved something like £12 per square foot rental growth. In terms of capital growth, M&G went on to sell the building only recently to Royal London Asset Management for £59 million. So again, a capital growth of around £23 million. And that's a yield change from 6.2% to 4.9%. Associated with Renaissance, Abstract also bought Emerald House, and within a 3-month period sold it. It then sold again within a year and became a PDR triggered building. And also M&G managed to refurbish 8 Bedford Park, which we'll see shortly, letting it to Superdrug and selling the investment to Capital Trust. So I think the point of this is to show that how important Croydon can be in terms of rental and capital growth and appetite. The investors' appetite has kept going, through most downturns. So, I would regard it as a great haven for money.
Moving down towards down Dingwall Road, we'd be going past the old job centre site, which is a joint venture by Telereal, Trillium and Bellway. It involves building 181 new homes across 2 towers. They're 9 stories and 24 stories, and has a flexible commercial space on the ground and second floors, potentially including a new restaurant, cafe or bar. And then in the foreground of the image that you can see at the moment, that's number 26, the former home of White Label, where Native have been bringing forward a build to rent scheme, which is now quite fully occupied, and LaSalle were also importantly involved in that scheme. The next building is Corinthian House.
Thanks, Bonnie. Corinthian House. This is a Mackay Securities building. It has a listed facade, and like number 1, it was designed by Richard Seifert and Partners. It has space available at the moment. As space comes up, it's refurbished. The picture you can see now is 8 Bedford Park. The address is actually being changed because at the time M&G started refurbishing this building, there were some dark areas and some difficult pedestrian type areas around the building, and we moved the entrance from Bedford Park onto Sydenham Road, and you can see there on the left hand side of the building a new flying entrance into the ground floor, and it's completely let in its entirety, 52,000 square feet, to Superdrug. Again, it's another really good story for Croydon. I think this is Sunley House, which is asset managed by LaSalle Investment Management for one of their key funds. This is a multi-let building. LaSalle are very hands-on. They're refurbishing the building at the moment. It has some availability, but it has occupiers such as Network Rail, Acon, and only just recently a deal was struck with MyPT, one of Croydon's favourite gyms, who have completely renovated the lower ground floor, and they're operating that as a gym, which is great news for the building. And a lot of landlords, where they have buildings of this scale and age, are looking to improve and put amenities in. I think 69 Park Lane is another one, which we haven't really seen in the photographs at the moment, but there's another one owned by CEG, where the landlord is spending time and quite a bit of money refurbishing common parts and adding amenities. I'm now going to hand over to Richard again as we head out to Purley Way.
So we would normally be driving down the London Road, thanks Vanessa, and going past Croydon University Hospital, and obviously our thoughts go to everyone who might be in there, whether working or as a patient. And as we go round the Thornton Heath Pond roundabout, which is coming up very soon, I would hand you over, or will hand you over, to my fellow partner, Alex Gale, to tell us a bit more about the industrial market. Everybody thinks of Croydon as an office centre, and now they think of residential towers, but actually it's a massively important logistics hub for the whole of South London. So Alex, over to you.
Thanks, Richard, and thanks, Bonnie, for the photo of IKEA, which is actually quite a good place to start because it just highlights the change in the Croydon industrial market that's been seen over the last few decades. This is actually a site of a former power station, and as everyone well knows, these famous IKEA towers can be seen from quite a way away. In terms of retail and industrial, we'll see that interlinking as we go on a little tour around the industrial market. So the London Borough of Croydon has circa about 6 million square feet of industrial space. As Richard has highlighted, it's very much come to the fore as a last mile delivery location for all of South London and indeed into central London as well. We've seen rent in some places almost double over the last 5 years, and currently vacant levels are hovering about 5%, which is a historic low for the area. Bonnie, do you want to click on to the next slide? So we've actually seen very little new development in the area. Most of the sites are owned by all the big funds such as Hermes, ETZ Investors, LaSalle, Capital Industrial, IPIF, to name but a few. And one of the standout sites which has laid dormant for quite some time has been the Stewart's Plastic site, which was first developed in, I believe, 1945. This is actually a slightly dated picture now because it's actually been demolished, or in the final throes of being demolished, because Aberdeen Standard Life, who own the site, are building 8 new industrial units, and more importantly for them, a link road through to the Valley Retail Park. So that's all ongoing, and they are looking for completion probably in the first quarter of next year. Up until last year, Croydon had seen, well, we saw absolutely no new development on the industrial side until since 2008, because just the lack of scarcity of land for redevelopment, and hence why the push towards the rents almost doubling. So one of the first schemes which PC'd at the back end of last year was Affinity X and Y, which is on your screen at the moment, which is actually another scheme by Aberdeen Standard Life. It was the first new development, as I say, for about 12 years, and one of the units has just been let. It's a new record rent for Croydon at just over £17 a square foot. Both units are about 20,000 square feet, and the second unit is believed to be under offer. It's situated on the site of a former Superdrug headquarters, which, as we heard from Vanessa, has moved in closer into Croydon town centre. The other exciting scheme that is now on site is the Prologis Beddington Lane scheme, which is on 10 acres of former land owned by Thames Water. They are now on site doing groundworks and hope to be finished probably in the first quarter, so at the end of January, beginning of February next year, subject to all the coronavirus and the likes of which is happening. So finally, we've actually got some new development. The unit on the Affinity scheme was actually let during the Corona period to a company called Peloton, who, for those into all their exercise, will know that they are the online cycling company. So those are the types of occupiers, along with the likes of Argos, Fruitful Office, Tropic Skincare, who are all distributing from Croydon as a location. At the start of this little piece, I talked about the IKEA and how it was originally industrial, gone to retail. Well, this is another story further down Purley Way, where we've actually seen the former Toys R Us store, which is about 50,000 square feet, has actually gone the other way and has just been let to Amazon for a distribution unit. And further down and surrounding the Toys R Us site, there is a lot more industrial development still to come. So we're in exciting times, and there is about 500,000 square feet of future development space to come in the Croydon area. I think I'll now pass back to Richard to talk about the colonnades.
The colonnades is a retail-led, retail and entertainment-led development, which is one of the new investments that London Borough of Croydon has purchased for their portfolio. And immediately opposite the colonnades is Airport House, which is the original terminus building for Croydon Airport, which was effectively London's first airport, and obviously the precursor to Gatwick, but now a business centre. Now I believe we loop back and come over the flyover, and I think Vanessa is going to talk to us about Bernard Weatherall and impact, etc.
Okay, thanks, Richard. So just as we move along on the flyover, you can see Bernard Weatherall looming in the background there, with Impact House on the right. Bernard Weatherall is obviously home to our own local authority, London Borough of Croydon. It's a 240,000 square foot BREEAM excellent building. Its floors step down. It's got public sector facing parts to it. It has some sublettings in it, typically Arcadis. Secretary of State for the Environment is there as well. It's got a 200 car space car park, and it's immediately opposite the old home of LBC. You can see where the scaffolding is up there, which is being redeveloped for residential. On the right, I pointed out Impact House. That was a former office building, refurbished very slowly by a Portuguese owner, which never fully let for offices. And as part of the PDR regime, it was converted to residential by Inspired Asset Management. It's now called Innova. It has 197 units, and it's a £90 million residential scheme. Just to the left, we can't quite see it, but to facilitate Bernard Weatherall House, the council bought another building called Davis House, which is around 70,000 square feet, which houses Tomorrow on the ground floor, and then a range of office lettings throughout the building. It's a building where London South Bank University are undoubtedly going to take some space moving forward, along with other tech users. Another growth cluster for Croydon is the tech market. I'm going to hand back now to Richard to talk about Wandle Car Park.
Well, just as we go past, well, the Wandle Car Park, there is now another tower, 25-storey tower, being put up by brick, constructed by Henry Construction, which is a 50% affordable rent shared ownership mix. The slide in front of you now is Leon House, which is a huge brutalist office building, which has been converted, award-winning redevelopment, but converted into residential permitted development flats, but not small ones. They're all London space standards. There's an amazing roof garden on the top with residents' communal facilities, and the building, the setting of the building provides setting for Leon 2, which will be another 350 new flats surrounding the tower, together with a variety of restaurants, shops, and a new public square. So it'll create a new hub on Croydon High Street. And I'll now hand you over back to Bonnie for the walking tour through the heart of Croydon.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. So predictably on these tours, it's very hard to judge the timing, but bear with us. We're on the final section of our tour, and we're going to be taking a short walk through the retail heart of Croydon, down the high street, and showing some of the cultural highlights, as well as the exciting new development of Queen's Square by R&F. So firstly, we'll be dropping off just outside the Whitgift Centre and coming through an image of when we did this on our last tour. The Whitgift Centre is a large shopping centre, I'm sure very well known to most people watching. It's in the centre of Croydon. It opened in stages between 1968 and 1970, and the first shop to open was Boots in 1968. The centre comprises 1.3 million square feet of retail space, has more than 140 outlets, and was the largest covered shopping development in Greater London until the opening of Westfield London in White City in 2008. In 2013, Hammerson and the Westfield Group joined, so Unibail, Rodamco, Westfield as it is now, formed a joint venture to redevelop the shopping mall and combine it with the neighbouring shopping centre Central, which you'll see as we come down the high street. Key tenants include M&S, H&M, Topshop, Superdry, River Island and the like. And the name of the centre comes from John Whitgift, who was a former Archbishop of Canterbury, and its freehold is owned by the Whitgift Foundation charity. The foundation sold a long-term lease to a company 75% owned and controlled by Howard Holdings and 25% by the foundation in the past. And the centre was built after the demolition of the historic buildings of Whitgift School, which used to occupy the site where the shopping centre now stands. As we come out of the Whitgift Centre and move down North End, Richard's going to give a couple of comments about the Croydon Partnership Scheme, which I know there's been a couple of questions about.
Yes, so the Croydon Partnership Scheme, the Westfield Hammerson scheme, effectively covers the Whitgift Centre, and additional buildings around the outside, like Green Park House and a couple of others. Now, obviously, it's a challenging time for retail, and the history of the scheme basically starts with a modest planning consent, still huge, and they then increase the retail square footage with an additional floor on the top, put some residential on, brought in some extra buildings around the edge, and I believe now that the scheme is being reviewed in light of the changing retail market, and I would hazard a guess that will result in more differing uses, and indeed in potentially including office, and certainly the scheme was a competing contender for the Home Office requirement that has obviously gone to Ruskin Square, but I think it's obviously clear that the Croydon Partnership are committed to Croydon. They also own Central, so they really need to see it as a success. And that scheme is being reviewed and worked on with the officers of the London Borough of Croydon as we speak. So it may be in due course that it is perhaps more of a phased development rather than a whole scheme all at once, but they are committed to regenerating the retail town centre with a scheme that will basically support the retail demand that will exist post this current crisis. And then I think we move on to the almshouses.
Yeah. So as we come down the high street, there's one of the most people's most fascinating parts of the tour normally is that just behind the view that you see now, we would turn into a small iron gate and be greeted with this view of the almshouses and be met by the chair of the Whitney Foundation, Martin Corney, who would be telling us about the special building that just, that is sort of an oasis of history off the side of a very bustling high street. So for several hundred years, the Archbishops of Canterbury had a residence at Old Palace, which we saw earlier, and they would spend summer months resting and from their travels between Canterbury and Lambeth in the Croydon area. And seeing the suffering caused by war and bad harvest, Archbishop John Whitgift sought and received permission from Elizabeth I to build a hospital and a school in Croydon. And in 1596, he laid the foundation stone for the Hospital of the Holy Trinity, now known as the Almshouses. So, so this is the historic almshouses. On the tour, often we would go up into the audience chamber where there's a document that shows Elizabeth I signing off Whitgift to build the almshouses. And it's a very fascinating different view of Croydon that not many people know about, so an interesting part of our tour. As we've come out of the almshouses, we carry on down the high street. In this view you can see a great street art piece which is part of the Croydon mural collection. David Hollier flew in from Brooklyn to put this piece together, showing Churchill on the side of the building. That building also houses Five Guys, which is a great new addition to the high street. Opposite you can see Turtle Bay, and this area of the high street has been recently, well, for the last just over a year, pedestrianised as a test by the council, and it's really reinvigorated this area. Also in Grants, which you can see to the left, one of the historic retail outlets in Croydon, there's been an exciting new installation of 9 escape rooms. So quite a vibrant new area as we come down towards Southend. And we're just going to quickly hand over to Tim, because we would now be going into the RNF marketing suite. And Tim from RNF is just going to tell us quickly about the Queen Square development. Over to you, Tim.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. My name's Tim Howells. I'm sincerely proud to be working here in Croydon, and proud that my employer is heavily involved in Croydon, being a local resident. One thing's for sure, for the whole presentation, there's been one word that's kept cropping up, and that's been sort of public realm across all the schemes, offices, all these big schemes that are being done here. And that to me signifies a really unified direction between the stakeholders and the local authority here. But so for something to start off with a little bit different, you probably haven't heard of RNF Properties. Who are RNF Properties? Well, they're one of the largest real estate developers in China. We've got over 100 large-scale developments across China, and the scale of Queen Square and some of the developments we've been seeing here today really sort of is just tiny in comparison to some of the schemes done in China that we've done. And I know I've seen some of them with my own eyes. We were founded in 1994 and we're listed on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. A couple of facts that are interesting and you may not know, but with more than 100 hotels under our ownership, we're the world's largest owner of luxury 4- and 5-star hotels. We're developing globally, so not just in China, not just in the UK, but also Australia, Malaysia, Thailand and Cambodia. And also, just a fun fact, like Croydon, we also share a love of football. We've got our own football team called RNF Guangzhou, who are in the Chinese Super League. So the vision for Queen Square, this is our sort of main building, the first building, that's the first phase, and this is the reinvigoration of the iconic Nestlé building. But our vision is to create a unique urban quarter located in the heart of Croydon. So certainly we've got the location. We want to provide a new town square. That's really sort of the soul of Queen Square, restoring the town hall to its rightful place as the key focal point in Croydon. And going back to sort of talking about public realm, we want to provide high quality, enlarged public realm in and amongst the buildings that we're going to deliver, creating new linked spaces and permeability with new routes and new views throughout Croydon. We want to provide a quarter which offers regeneration and a vibrant live, work and relax atmosphere, but it's also complementary to the rest of the town centre given its location. We want to be a catalyst for local jobs and opportunities within the food and beverage offerings, and providing food and beverage and start-up workspaces throughout the ground floor of the whole master plan. And above all, we want to provide a hub for the community and the residents alike. So the master plan, Queen Square sits on a unique 5.5 acre site right in the heart of Croydon. As I say, we want to focus around a brand new pedestrianised town square right next to the town hall. We want to provide circa 1,000 residential units across 6 buildings and approximately 60,000 square foot of retail and commercial space. So phase 1 is Highgrove Tower, which is the refurbishment of the former Nestlé headquarters and offices to the side of that on Park Street. And phase 2, currently in pre-planning, due very soon to go into full application, planning application, includes the Grade 2 listed Cedars House next door to Highgrove Tower, or Nestlé building, the town square, and additional residential units and commercial premises. And just some quick overview of Highgrove Tower, or what's going to become of the Nestlé Tower. So there's going to be 227 apartments, studios to 3 bedrooms. It'll rise by a couple of floors up to 28 floors. And all the apartments will have balconies. There'll be high specifications throughout. And the amenities in there will be a concierge, on-site security and CCTV, a residence gym, lounge, roof terrace and bike store. And we've also got designs on the ground floor for a coffee shop. So but I particularly like this view here. That's, I think, is Thomas Turner Path. And that is sort of this sort of ethos of increasing the permeability across the site and through the site, and really sort of having the town hall as the focal point of Croydon. So that's all I've got.
So we're just going to take a final loop down the high street as we come out of the Queen Square development, conveniently just down Thomas Turner Path. We are going past the clock tower on the left, which houses the David Lean Independent Cinema, which just celebrated its 25th anniversary, and also the Braithwaite Hall, which is home to the Croydon Beer Festival. And we also went past another great piece of street art, which was brought in by a Chilean artist, and another part of the Croydon mural project. We'll then be just heading down to Surrey Street on our way past, looking at the Pump House, which is a historic site. It's owned by Guildhouse Rose Pride, who have plans for the redevelopment of the area. Again, another mural you can see in this one is a mural of Diana, and surrounding on Surrey Street there's also a light installation by Saatchi artist Lauren Baker. There's a blue installation of a Soldier Boy by Scooney, and lots of other exciting street art commissions, which are part of the council's 1.1 million renovation of the 700-year-old market. Also, turning around from the pump house, we will in the future be able to see Beam House Yard, which Rich is just going to say a couple of words about.
Yes, Beam House Yard. This building was purchased or has been purchased by Regent Land. Going to be demolished. It should be starting shortly, and it's going to be replaced with an 8-storey building with 30% affordable, as well as new commercial space and an events hub at the bottom to replace Matthews Yard. The affordable is all going to be owned and managed by PA Housing, and the commercial units will basically be providing a new restaurant, cafe, and the event space is going to be called the Beam House. The Beam House is obviously reference to the pump house opposite. And now I think we're going to just go up Surrey Street. Don't know,
Yeah.
Bonnie, do you want to do this bit?
Yeah, so just turning around here on our final little walk round to the council offices, we'll be going past Ludicrous, which is the board game cafe, has over 1,000 board games, and is all part of the very exciting evening entertainment that we have down in this area. We also have the VR bar on our left, and straight ahead just under the flyover, Fun House, which has about 200,000 balls in 2 ball pits, and there's a couple of great pubs on our right as well. As we come up with the flyover on our right, we'll just be coming back up the same view that we saw as we came in over the flyover, up to the council building again, and having a quick look at the pub development of what was Taberner House.
Yes, the Taberner House development, what have we got there? 3-4 stories, is now up to 22 on that corner. So it looks does look a little different today. And I think the back towers adjacent to Queen's Gardens themselves have actually topped out now, and have got the finish on the top of them. Cladding's going up at a rate of knots, and that site hasn't paused at all throughout this current situation. It'll basically become 514 units, and they're split 340 private rented, 90 affordable, and 84 shared ownership. And it's Legal & General have got the shared ownership, and Ford funded the deal with Hub to develop the corner building, particularly, which is 35 stories, as a rented tower. It obviously it has 3 other blocks, and 40% will be affordable, and it obviously overlooks Queen's Gardens. The affordable, L&Q signed a £62 million deal to forward fund the two affordable blocks, and the Bridges Fund Management are assisting with the wider development. L&Q will provide a mixture of shared ownership and London living rent apartments, increasing the overall affordable housing across the development from 40 to 50%. And I think that effectively ends the tour. I mean, just final thoughts in these troubled times. Would you like to go first, Vanessa? Any thoughts on how the office market moves on that?
Yeah, so, yeah, I mean, we're living in really, it's quite hard to fathom what really is going to happen going ahead. But look, most occupiers out there are completely focused on improving cash flow and liquidity. There's already evidence of a certain amount of movement from central London into Croydon, where some firms are already looking at safeguarding their staff and finding a bolt hole closer to the commuter areas of Surrey, Sussex, and Kent. And I think more of this is going to happen. So as we move forward through this next stage of the government trying to really quick start the economy, I think there'll be a huge amount of churn. And the important thing about Croydon is it has a chameleon factor. So if someone wants cost-effective space, the space is there. If someone wants grade A space, there is space there, along with amenities and great accessibility. So I think in many ways, I just want to reinforce the message that Croydon is a very safe haven in terms of occupying developing and for investments. And it's going to be an interesting few months ahead of us. And thanks from me for joining our virtual tour.
Super.
Over to you, Richard.
I would echo that. I mean, I think the ability of workers to get into Croydon without the need to be on a tube or on very packed public transport, and must surely bode well, and also the cost base as well. I mean, I could see Croydon opening up, a long time in front of, the West End and the city, just because you've got more space. And I think the current situation has also shown us the needs and benefits of having some private amenity space, from having easy access to lots of parks and things, and to be able to get around without the need of public transport just by walking. And certainly the town centre provides all of that now, with open space, with residential and commercial all together, to avoid the need for densely packed public transport. So I hope and believe the future of Croydon will still move on and be successful. And as Alex obviously said, the logistics side of things, we all now know the benefit of online shopping, and that I think is only going to grow from strength to strength. And Croydon's unique location in the centre, the jewel of South London, if you like, bodes very well for the future of that side of things as well. So, Bonnie, I think you were just going to cover up and coming development events.
Yeah, thank you both. And I guess thank you to all of our speakers that have been taking part this morning. Another great positive message for the outlook for Croydon is the collaborative attitude of the businesses, the developers and investors, as seen by the Develop Croydon Forum, but also the retailers and the residents. There's an amazing community in Croydon, so I'm sure it has a positive future ahead of it. So thank you everyone for taking part and for watching. Apologies we took longer than expected, but obviously you allowed far too much time to get back to Victoria, so it won't be a problem. Just to let you know about a couple of other things that we have coming up as Develop Croydon. We ran a webinar that you can watch back on the White Label YouTube channel about the planning process last week. We've got another couple of webinars coming up during the first week of June. One of them is about what will a carbon zero Croydon look like, that we're working on with ACOM and Croydon Constructing Excellence, and the other is a panel about the future of Croydon that Sheikha will be joining on the Thursday. If you are interested in the forum or interested in knowing more about these events, please email me. My email is currently on the screen. And yeah, thank you for joining. Here's a delighted customer from one of our other tours, and hopefully if you've got any feedback you could let us know, and we can always improve it for future events. So yeah, thank you very much everyone.
Thanks, Bonnie.
Thanks very much. Goodbye.
Thanks everyone.